Hi, this is Kalori. Welcome to Scrum and Agile Digest. Let's continue talking about Agile EVM.
Now, to calculate Agile EVM, there are multiple calculations, right? You can have a planned percentage complete. You can have an actual percentage complete planned value. You can look at the earned value. That's going to be like the actual percentage complete into the budgeted completion. You can look at cost performance index, earned value by actual cost, scheduled performance index, earned value by planned value, estimation at complete, estimation completion that's going to be planned iterations by scheduled performance index. I don't want to go into much detail about this. It's the concepts are very similar to what we use in regular project management, right? All we're doing is, we are looking at different user stories. We're breaking it down, and you're attaching a cost to that. Like, let's say your feature is a home screen, right? Based on the number of stories that you're estimating, the stories you're completing, you can actually assign a value to it, and you can say, hey, one story point is going to be $5. So let's say I have a home page which is 10 story points. I'm going to be actually spending $50 on that. Or login screen, let's say 20 story points, $10 per story point. I can say I'll be spending $200 on the story point. So basically, I don't want to go too much detail into it. At some point, maybe I'll make a new slide on this, but it takes a lot of, it's going to be a lot of information. So I don't want to, I don't want to move into traditional project management because EVM is traditional project management, but I just want to give you an idea that whatever concepts you use in traditional project management, you can use in Agile Scrum. It completely depends on you. You can modify it. You can use it for your particular organization. The other thing is visibility on stories. How do you get more visibility on stories? One is automated testing. With the DevOps model coming in, you're doing continuous integration, continuous deployment. Automated testing is the way to go. Manual testing takes a lot of time. It's not always going to give you the right results. With automated testing, you make a change in the code, you test it immediately, you basically plug it in to your master branch and you release it. And there's so many tools out there, just Jenkins, there's GitHub, that's going to help you do that. But all this is only possible with automated testing, especially with sprints, given a smaller cycle. Automated testing is the way to go because it's not possible to test each and every feature every day. That's going to take a long time and it's not going to fit within the sprint time box. The other thing is burndown charts. We already saw how it gives you visibility on stories. Then, there are some coding standards that every team should follow, especially to reduce technical debt. And there are a couple of slides on technical debt that I will go through. Of course, the MVP, the minimum viable product that you're actually presenting, is going to give you a lot of visibility on your finished stories. What is Scrum of Scrum, right? Scrum of Scrum from the fact. This is basically a scaled agile concept. This means that when you have multiple teams, right? A team larger than 10 people, what you usually try to do is, to reduce the communication channels, you try to break it up into smaller teams. Each team is going to have their own backlog, right? Their own Scrum Master. They'll do their own ceremonies, right? Maintain their own artifacts. So basically, they'll do their own scrums. However, and each team will have their own Scrum Master. The Scrum Masters of each team, right? They can meet with each other weekly, and you can change the frequency. It can be once a week, twice a week, thrice a week, to discuss the sprint status or impediments, what the teams are willing to achieve, or any hindrances, right? And all the Scrum Masters can report up to the product owner. So instead of, let's say you have 3 teams, right, of 10 people each, instead of having a big Scrum team of 30 people, which is actually not advisable because you should have between 3 to 9 people in a team, you break it down into 3 teams of 10 people. They'll all have their own Scrum Master. They'll all have, they'll all work off the same product backlog. There'll only be one single product owner. And all the Scrum Masters, they will carry out they'll have their own Scrum teams, they'll carry out their own Scrum ceremonies, everything by themselves. But the Scrum Masters, they will meet like once a week or twice a week or thrice a week, kind of like a daily, the format will be like kind of like a daily Scrum, but they'll meet once a week or a couple of weeks, couple of times a week, and they will talk about what their teams are doing right now, right? What the teams achieved in the past, and if there are any impediments, and then they will report. All of them will report up the status to the product owner. The advantage is that first of all, you are reducing the communication channel, so it's easier to work with. Second, since the Scrum Masters are meeting regularly, they can talk to each other about impediments, and one team might be able to resolve another team's impediments. They want to make sure they are all on the same page, and they should all work off the same product backlog. For instance, if you have, let's take the example of the e-commerce website, right? You can have a Scrum team that's specifically working on the homepage, right? Another Scrum team might be working on the cart, right? The shopping cart. So basically how you select the product, how you add the product, what kind of pricing you're going to show, what the display is going to be. And another team basically might work on, the logistics of the shipping status, right? The tracking, and when, what kind of credit card or what kind of payment information you will accept from the user, and how they will check out, and how you're going to track. So all these three teams are working on three different set of user stories from the same product backlog, and they can meet a couple of times a week and discuss any impediments. So keep the format same as daily stand-ups, but the frequency is going to be lesser when they meet, and then they all report up to the product owner and define the status. That's kind of Scrum of Scrum. You're trimming the fat. So instead of having 30 people together, you break it up into smaller teams. So this is basically a graphical representation of the Scrum of Scrum. So you have the Scrum A, B, C. They're all reporting, they all have a Scrum Master, and then Scrum Team D, E, F all have a Scrum Master. They're all meeting together, and they can report up to the product owner. Or some teams also have a primary Scrum Master, and the mini Scrum Masters basically for different teams will report the status to the primary Scrum Master, and they might report all the way to the product owner. And again, when I say report, this is kind of informal way of saying report. It may not be an organizational actually reporting structure. It's just an informal way of talking about how your Scrum teams are working, how the progress is going on. Next, so hopefully after this lesson you have all bought in why Scrum is awesome, Scrum is great, blah blah blah. But again, every process has its disadvantages, right? Scrum is not a silver bullet. It works for most organizations, but it may not work for your organization. So you definitely need to look at the disadvantages and make sure it's something that you want to implement, you want to be completely committed to. So having said that, let's look at some of the disadvantages, right? Scrum is very open to change. So there's a big scope of, there's a big probability that there's going to be scope creep. And we saw how to avoid it and how to accept stories, based on our velocity, based on our burndown. There are so many tools out there which will help you decide whether you should accept scope or not. Scrum is a pretty new concept. So, the team has to have experience. They need to commit to the artifacts. They need to commit to the meetings. It's not, you can't just do a couple of Scrum ceremonies here and there and call yourself Scrum. You have to do, for Scrum to be successful, you have to do A to Z of whatever the Scrum Agile Manifesto has prescribed. You have to do the ceremonies. You have to be transparent. You have to be adaptive. and you have to work as a team. A Scrum Master, if you have a part-time Scrum Master, right, or you have a Scrum Master who's not following all the Scrum principles, that's a wrong Scrum Master, right? They are supposed to be a good cheerleader. If they're not doing that, if they're not keeping the team together, focused on delivering the MVP, if they are not keeping away distraction, that's not a good Scrum Master, right? So get a good coach, get a good Scrum Master who actually understands Scrum and is ready to be a servant leader, who's ready to provide that coaching to the other team members as well. The other thing is, if you have user stories which are not worded properly, the tasks are not worded properly, it's never going to work for you, right? So you won't be able to break it down properly into hours or commitment. Your burn down is not going to look good. You won't know what's happening. You won't know what you're doing. So the story should be properly worded so you're able to break it down into granularly into hours, and you are able to use it in your burnout, right? Otherwise, you won't be able to decompose it properly, and you won't be able to give a proper MVP that the product owner actually is expecting. Now, let's look at some anti-patterns of Scrum, right? And we'll talk about anti-patterns of Scrum, sprints, product owners, Scrum Masters. So by anti-patterns, I mean, the patterns that go against the Scrum philosophy, right? What Scrum actually is trying to teach. So let's start with Scrum anti-patterns. One is not adapting Scrum properly, right? So there are some immutable rules in Scrum, like we discussed. You need to follow all of them. You cannot just follow a couple of them here and then call yourself Scrum. It's never going to work. For the Scrum synergy to work together, all of the Scrum rules have to work properly, right? All the elements, the artifacts, the process, the ceremonies, they have to all work together. Otherwise, it's going to be a dysfunctional Scrum and you're going to actually do more harm than good, right? Recognize impediments. An impediment is something that a team cannot resolve, and they might need the help of a Scrum Master, right? So in that spirit, try to bring all the impediments as early as possible, right? So you have the time to actually resolve it and get back on track if that's actually affecting your burnout. Also, remember one thing, right? Everything that you're bringing forward may not be an impediment. You may not need to spend time on it. So you have to recognize which one actually needs the time of the Scrum Master, the rest of the team. For instance, if you're not able to log into your computer, that is not something, that's not an impediment. That's not something that the Scrum Master can actually resolve for you. You probably have to, log in a ticket or, work with your IT department to resolve. However, if you have, let's say you're trying to, create some snapshots in the cloud, or, you don't have the infrastructure set up, or let's say you're working with one of the vendors like AWS, you're not able to get in touch with them. Those are things that a Scrum Master can help you escalate, that can stop your release. So you need to work on those. So you have to recognize what is the degree of the impediment, how important it is, and which ones need the attention. Let's look at some anti-patterns of Scrum Master, right? Scrum Master should not act as a manager, right? That's not their role. They need to be a servant leader, right?